13. Black pastors with the worst tempers of all time. What happens when the pulpit becomes a battlefield? Imagine sitting in church expecting a message of peace, only to witness your pastor explode with rage, hurl insults, or even put hands on someone in front of the congregation. From viral meltdowns over luxury gifts to violent outbursts caught on live TV, these moments prove that even spiritual leaders can lose control in ways that shake entire communities. On Legends of Black Excellence, we reveal the 13 black pastors with the worst tempers of all time. Hit subscribe because you won't believe who made this list. Carlton Harris. In the heart of Kansas City, Missouri pastor Carlton Thunderberg once held a reputation as a gifted speaker and visionary leader. As the co-pastor of Church at the Well with his wife Silverina, he wasn't just another Sunday preacher. He was a man who carried ambitions beyond the pulpit. Known locally as a strong communicator and a conference speaker, Thunderberg founded a nonprofit designed to bridge corporate America with grassroots Christian groups. For a time, he was celebrated as a modern minister who understood both the church and the business world. But in August 2022, his name left the confines of Kansas City and went national, though not for reasons he would have hoped. During a sermon on August 7th, Thunderberg's temper boiled over in a way that shocked both his congregation and the internet. In a clip that went viral, he chastised his members for not fulfilling what he considered a simple request, buying him a luxury Movado watch he had asked for the previous year. "You're still poor. Broke, busted, and disgusted," he scolded from the pulpit, his tone cutting rather than inspiring. He compared himself to Gucci and Prada, asking why his followers could spend money on fast food Red Lobster dinners or designer brands, but not honor their pastor with the gift he wanted. The sting of entitlement came through loud and clear, and for those sitting in the pews that morning, it was a moment of discomfort that quickly spiraled into national embarrassment once the video hit TikTok and Twitter. The backlash was swift. Social media erupted with commentary, memes, and criticism. Many labeled him greedy and arrogant, while others joked about the absurdity of a preacher comparing himself to luxury fashion houses. Within days, Thunderberg's name was trending nationwide, not for a revival or spiritual breakthrough, but for what looked like an outburst of vanity. Realizing the damage, Thunderberg turned to Facebook to deliver a public apology. He admitted his words were inexcusable and acknowledged that no amount of context could erase the harshness of his delivery. He explained that he had already apologized privately to his congregation, who, to their credit, responded with grace and forgiveness, but felt it necessary to also speak directly to the wider public. He confessed he had been corrected by those he was accountable to and extended his apology to fellow pastors who might suffer reputational fallout from his actions. Yet apologies, while sincere, do not always erase memory. For many, the image of Carlton Thunderberg remains frozen in that fiery moment, a pastor wagging his finger at his flock, accusing them of being cheap, while lamenting his missing designer timepiece. In an age where one viral clip can define a person, Thunderberg learned how quickly a career built on charisma can unravel when temper takes the microphone. Thunderberg continues to serve in ministry, but his name is now etched into internet history as an example of what happens when frustration collides with entitlement in front of a camera. The lesson is sobering. In the pulpit, words are power, and when those words drip with anger instead of encouragement, the damage can extend far beyond the four walls of a church. Lamer Whitehead. In the bustling streets of Brooklyn, New York, few pastors have drawn as much attention and criticism as Bishop Lamer Whitehead. He is the face of Leaders of Tomorrow International Churches, and for many years, he seemed to embody the prosperity gospel message in its most literal form. Clad in designer suits, stepping out of Rolls-Royces and luxury SUVs, and dripping in jewelry, Whitehead cultivated an image that blurred the line between pastor and celebrity. To his supporters, it was proof of God's blessing. To his critics, it was the very picture of vanity. But what cemented Whitehead's name in internet history wasn't just his expensive taste, it was his temper. In July 2022, during a live-streamed Sunday service, Whitehead was robbed at gunpoint. The video showed masked men storming in and taking an estimated $400,000 worth of jewelry from him and his wife. The clip instantly went viral, and while many sympathized with his ordeal, others pointed out that his lavish lifestyle had made him a target. Only months later, Whitehead found himself at the center of another viral moment, this time not as a victim, but as the aggressor. While preaching during a live broadcast, a woman interrupted his message. Instead of handling the disruption calmly, Whitehead erupted. He walked off the pulpit, confronted her directly, and shoved her out of the camera's view. The moment shocked viewers worldwide, sparking heated debates over whether his actions were self-defense or a public display of pastoral rage. Police arrested him shortly afterward, though charges were later dropped. That incident wasn't an isolated one. Whitehead has repeatedly clashed with critics both in person and online. He has called out fellow clergy in fiery social media videos, cursing, shouting, and branding them as haters jealous of his success. His confrontational streak has made him a favorite subject of tabloids and gossip blogs, which often highlight his flashy lifestyle alongside his outbursts. Adding fuel to the fire are his ongoing legal troubles. In late 2022, federal authorities charged him with wire fraud extortion and making false statements alleging that he scammed parishioners and business partners out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whitehead pleaded not guilty and denied all wrongdoing, insisting he was being unfairly targeted because of his success and confidence. Yet every court appearance, every press conference, and every heated video response only deepened the impression of a man constantly at war with critics, the media, and sometimes even his own congregation. The paradox of Lamor Whitehead is this: his charisma and boldness built him a platform, but his temper and indulgence often overshadow his message. His defenders argue that he's a modern prophet, unafraid to live large and fight back against detractors. His opponents see him as a cautionary tale of ego rage and misplaced priorities in ministry. Whether one views him as a victim of public scrutiny or the architect of his own downfall, one fact is undeniable. Bishop Lamor Whitehead is as well known for his outbursts as he is for his sermons. His story is a striking reminder that when a pastor's temper becomes part of the brand, it can turn the pulpit into a stage for conflict rather than healing. Creflo Dollar. Few names in American Christianity are as instantly recognizable as Creflo Augustus Dollar Jr., the founder and senior pastor of World Changers Church International in College Park, Georgia. Known globally for his prosperity preaching, Dollar built an empire on the promise that faith and financial success go hand in hand. His church attracts tens of thousands of worshipers each week, while his television broadcasts reach millions more. Dressed in sharp suits, preaching with authority, and often behind the wheel of luxury vehicles, Dollar has long been the embodiment of the prosperity gospel movement. But his image of polished confidence took a dramatic turn in 2012 when his temper became the story. That year, his teenage daughter called the police after an argument spiraled out of control inside the family home. According to police reports, the dispute began over her refusal to attend church and escalated to the point where she alleged that her father had grabbed her by the throat and hit her with a shoe. The incident shocked the Christian community not only because of the accusations, but because the man who preached about blessing and abundance was suddenly making headlines for anger and violence. Dollar was arrested and charged with simple battery and cruelty to children, his mugshot quickly plastered across national news outlets. For critics, it was a rare glimpse behind the curtain of a pastor who had carefully cultivated an image of control and prosperity. For his supporters, it was a painful moment of human weakness in a man they deeply admired. When he returned to the pulpit, Dollar addressed the incident head-on. Standing before his congregation, he dismissed the reports as exaggerated, framing the situation as a father disciplining his child. He even injected humor into the explanation, but his words revealed the deeper truth that frustration and tempers, when unchecked, can unravel even the most carefully built reputation. The charges were eventually dropped after he completed an anger management program, yet the memory of that night remains tied to his public image. This wasn't the only time Dollar's temper collided with his ministry. Over the years, he has been criticized for bristling at questions about his lavish lifestyle, including his request for a $65 million Gulfstream G650 private jet in 2015. When challenged by the media, his responses often carried an edge, portraying his critics as faithless or envious. Instead of calming the storm, his defiance only amplified perceptions of arrogance. Yet despite controversy, Dollar's ministry has endured. His church still commands a massive following. His books remain bestsellers, and his message continues to attract audiences hungry for hope and prosperity. For many, his fiery delivery is part of the appeal. But for others, the 2012 domestic incident stands as proof that unchecked temper can fracture the very foundation of credibility. Creflo Dollar's story is a study in contrasts, a man whose charisma built a global platform, but whose anger threatened to dismantle it in a single moment. He is living proof that even the most celebrated pastors are not immune to the same struggles that plague ordinary families. And while forgiveness has been extended, the shadow of his temper still lingers, reminding the world that a reputation for prosperity means little if self-control is lost in the process. Eddie Long. For years, Bishop Eddie Long stood as one of the towering figures of American Christianity. As the senior pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, he transformed a modest congregation into one of the nation's largest, with over 25,000 members at its peak. His influence stretched far beyond the pulpit into politics, education, and culture. But alongside his success came a temper that often erupted under pressure. When lawsuits alleging misconduct hit his ministry in 2010, Long was thrust into the harshest spotlight of his career. Instead of quietly addressing the accusations, he stormed back from the pulpit with theatrical defiance. In one of his most infamous sermons, he strode onto the stage clad in what looked like battle armor, framing himself as a warrior under spiritual attack. His voice thundered, his gestures slashed the air, and his congregation roared in support. For many, however, the performance came across not as righteous strength, but as raw anger, a leader lashing out instead of calming the storm. Long's preaching style had always been intense. He was known to pace the stage, bark commands, and point forcefully at his audience, sometimes leaving listeners feeling scolded rather than uplifted. His temper, wrapped in the cadence of fiery sermons, became part of his identity. For supporters, it was passion. For critics, it was evidence of arrogance. Would you see a pastor's fiery delivery as power or as temper taking over the message? As his health declined in the mid-2010s, Long's once booming voice softened and his physical presence diminished. Yet the memory of his confrontational sermons lingered, etched into the minds of both admirers and detractors. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 63, leaving behind a legacy marked by both remarkable growth and unforgettable controversy. His story is a stark reminder that when anger becomes part of a pastor's brand, it can overshadow even decades of ministry achievements. Jamal Bryant. If Bishop Long embodied the anger of defiance, Pastor Jamal Harrison Bryant represents confrontation as a strategy. From the very start of his ministry, Bryant refused to be a quiet preacher. As the founder of Empowerment Temple in Baltimore, and later as the pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church after Long's passing, Bryant brought with him a fiery blend of charisma, intellect, and raw energy. But along with these gifts came a temper that often turned his sermons into battlegrounds. Bryant has lived much of his pastoral life under the glare of scandal, and instead of avoiding the spotlight, he often used it to his advantage. When accusations about his personal life made headlines, Bryant didn't shy away. Instead, he thundered from the pulpit, directly addressing critics and firing back at gossip. His hands would slash the air, his voice would climb to a shout, and his words carried the sting of anger more than the calm of counsel. His temper isn't limited to personal attacks. Bryant's commitment to social justice, especially issues of race, poverty, and inequality, has also fueled fiery outbursts. In sermons and speeches, he has railed against political leaders, systemic failures, and even fellow clergy with an intensity that electrifies supporters but unsettles detractors. His energy can feel electric, but critics argue it often crosses into hostility, blurring the line between righteous anger and uncontrolled temper. Unlike some pastors who apologize after explosive moments, Bryant often doubles down, making confrontation part of his brand. To his followers, this honesty is refreshing and courageous. To others, it looks like unchecked ego. Yet one fact remains: whether loved or hated, Jamal Bryant commands attention, and his temper has become as recognizable as his message. Noel Jones. Bishop Noel Jones, pastor of City of Refuge Church in Gardena, California, has long been celebrated for his intellectual sermons and his ability to unpack scripture with clarity. Born in Spanish Town, Jamaica in 1950 and raised in a family of strong personalities, including his famous sister singer, Grace Jones, Noel brought both charisma and intensity into ministry. With a church membership exceeding 17,000, he became one of the most prominent preachers on the West Coast. But with all of his eloquence, Jones has another side, an intensity that can quickly tip into temper. His sermons often begin calmly with a measured voice and deliberate teaching. Yet as he builds momentum, his tone escalates. Words sharpen, his voice rises, and his body language becomes commanding, sometimes intimidating. In those moments, what began as teaching transforms into a fiery outburst. Critics often point to moments when Jones reacted strongly to being questioned about his leadership or the politics within his church. Instead of brushing aside detractors, he has been known to raise his voice and deliver sharp rebukes from the pulpit. Gestures become emphatic words, repeat with force, and the scolding edge in his voice leaves no doubt that frustration has taken hold. For his followers, this fiery style is electrifying. They see a man unwilling to compromise and unafraid to challenge opposition. But to outsiders watching sermon clips online, Jones can appear more combative than compassionate. His temper has not derailed his influence, but it has added a layer of controversy to his legacy. While his intellect sets him apart, it is his flashes of anger that remind the world that even the most polished voices can lose patience under pressure. Gino Jennings. If Bishop Noel Jones's temper is revealed in flashes, Pastor Gino Jennings has built his entire ministry around confrontation. As the founder and leader of the First Church of Our Lord Jesus Christ in Philadelphia, Jennings commands an audience that extends far beyond his congregation, thanks to television, radio, and especially YouTube. His sermons are not just passionate, they are fiery assaults on everything he deems wrong in modern Christianity. Jennings doesn't sugarcoat. He calls out prosperity preachers, labels fellow pastors false prophets, and rails against congregants he sees as worldly. Women wearing makeup jewelry or form-fitting clothing have been the subject of his fiery rebukes. He does not deliver these messages softly. He shouts, slams the pulpit, and repeats words with the force of a drill sergeant. This blunt style has made him a lightning rod online. Supporters call him bold, fearless, and unafraid to preach the uncompromising truth. Critics, however, see him as harsh, judgmental, and even cruel. Countless viral clips show Jennings barking at his audience, dismissing opponents in debates by talking over them, and ridiculing other denominations with an almost gleeful intensity. Jennings himself seems unbothered by detractors. He embraces the controversy, wearing it as proof that he stands firm in a watered-down religious world. For him, confrontation is not a slip of temper, but a deliberate method of ministry. Yet that same confrontational edge is precisely what cements his place on this list. By choosing fury as a strategy, Jennings ensures that his legacy will be defined not only by doctrine, but by the thunder of his temper. Clarence McClendon. Bishop Clarence McClendon rose to prominence in Los Angeles as one of the most polished, media-savvy preachers of his generation. He is the pastor of Full Harvest International Church, and for decades he carefully crafted an image of charisma, glamour, and authority. Known for his musical projects, his television broadcasts, and his commanding presence, McClendon was often compared to a Hollywood star as much as a pastor. Yet beneath the sophisticated presentation lay a temper that reality television cameras would later expose. In 2013, McClendon joined the cast of Preachers of L.A., a reality series that promised to give viewers a behind-the-scenes look at the lives of high-profile pastors. For McClendon, the show began as a platform to extend his ministry. Instead, it revealed a man quick to anger and unafraid to let frustration spill into shouting matches. In one memorable episode, he clashed with fellow pastors so intensely that he stormed out of a room, his body language radiating fury. The polished preacher, who seemed untouchable on stage, suddenly appeared very human, angry, defensive, and unwilling to back down. Those who have worked with McClendon describe him as exacting, ambitious, and sometimes demanding. His pursuit of excellence often veers into perfectionism, and when expectations aren't met, anger is rarely far behind. Even in the pulpit, while he is best known for his eloquence, his tone can become sharp when he feels challenged or disrespected. Clips of him raising his voice, pointing aggressively, and chastising others have circulated online, painting a portrait of a pastor whose temper can undo the sophistication he projects. For supporters, his fiery edge is part of his power, a leader unwilling to compromise. But critics argue that his temper makes his ministry more about drama than devotion. Either way, McClendon stands as a reminder that polish cannot always conceal passion when it crosses into rage. Al Sharpton. Reverend Al Sharpton is perhaps one of the most recognizable pastors in America, not only for his work in the church, but for his role as a civil rights leader, activist, and media figure. He is the founder of the National Action Network and has spent decades at the front lines of racial justice battles, speaking truth to power with a booming voice and sharp rhetoric. But with that passion comes a temper that has often erupted in public arenas. Sharpton's sermons and speeches are never calm affairs. His cadence builds like a drumbeat, his finger jabs the air, and his voice crescendos into powerful declarations. At rallies, he pounds podiums, calls out leaders by name, and demands accountability with biting words. On television debates, he is famous for clashing with opponents, often talking over them in heated exchanges that blur into shouting matches. These moments have gone viral countless times, showcasing a man whose anger is as much a trademark as his activism. Supporters argue that Sharpton's temper is not weakness but strength. In a world where injustice persists, they see his fury as righteous indignation, the fuel that wakes people up and forces change. To his critics, however, his anger borders on grandstanding, a performance meant to draw headlines rather than build solutions. What cannot be denied is that Sharpton's legacy is inseparable from his fire. Whether on the pulpit in marches or on live television, he has harnessed outrage as a weapon. Sometimes it has rallied thousands to action, other times it has alienated those who crave a softer approach. But in every case, his temper has kept him firmly in the spotlight, making him both admired and controversial. Hezekiah Walker. Bishop Hezekiah Walker is best known as the hip-hop pastor, a gospel music giant whose songs like "Sold Out" and "Every Praise" have filled churches and arenas across the world. As pastor of Love Fellowship Tabernacle in Brooklyn and leader of the Grammy-winning Love Fellowship Choir, he transformed gospel music into a global force, attracting young and old alike with his high-energy praise. On stage, he is joyful, exuberant, and seemingly untouchable, conducting choirs with a smile that lights up the sanctuary. But behind that radiant public persona lies a temper that has occasionally boiled over in surprising ways. Reports have circulated of Walker engaging in heated verbal disputes, some in connection with church operations, others in public settings where he was overheard raising his voice. For someone celebrated for spreading joy through music, the sight of him caught in confrontation struck many as out of character. Colleagues in both ministry and music have described him as a perfectionist, demanding excellence from those who serve under him. When things go wrong, that drive can quickly flip into sharp words and visible frustration. One such reported incident involved an argument connected to a church event where voices were raised, and Walker's stern tone shocked those present. While it didn't escalate into violence, it cemented his reputation as a man whose pursuit of perfection sometimes spills into impatience. For longtime followers, Walker's flashes of temper don't erase his contributions to gospel music and ministry, but they do add complexity to his image. He is not just the smiling choir leader on stage, he is also a leader with intense expectations who can lose composure when things don't align with his vision. His story is a reminder that even leaders whose work is rooted in joy can struggle to manage the darker side of human emotion. T.D. Jakes. When people think of American megachurches, Bishop Thomas Dexter Jakes, better known as T.D. Jakes, is one of the first names that comes to mind. As pastor of the Potter's House in Dallas, Texas, he leads a congregation of more than 30,000 members and influences millions more through best-selling books, films, and international conferences. His booming baritone dramatic stage presence and ability to connect with people across cultures have made him one of the most powerful voices in Christianity today. But such immense visibility comes with pressure, and at times Jakes's passion has crossed into what many interpret as temper. His sermons are famous for their energy. He paces the stage, raises his voice to soaring heights, and uses theatrical gestures to drive his message home. Most of the time, it feels inspirational. Yet there are moments where the tone sharpens, transforming encouragement into scolding. Critics highlight instances where he bluntly told listeners not to waste his time if they weren't serious about their faith. The words cut like a reprimand rather than guidance. Do you believe fiery preaching helps drive the message home, or does it risk turning inspiration into intimidation? Clips of Jakes's sharper rebukes often circulate online, sparking debate about whether they reveal a temper beneath the polished image of wisdom. Some see authenticity proof that Jakes is unafraid to call out hypocrisy. Others believe it reveals frustration and anger leaking through a carefully crafted persona. Jakes himself has acknowledged that leadership under constant scrutiny is exhausting, and that not every day is a good day in the pulpit. With tens of thousands hanging on every word, the pressure can push even seasoned leaders into moments where passion tips over into irritation. While his global reputation remains largely intact, those fiery clips have carved a secondary narrative around him, one of a pastor whose temper sometimes interrupts his message of empowerment. For Jakes, the line between passion and temper has always been thin. His voice may inspire millions, but his sharpest words remind us that even the greatest leaders are human, and that unchecked anger can echo as loudly as any sermon. Daniel Obinim. Pastor Daniel Obinim, founder of the International God's Way Church in Ghana, is one of the most controversial preachers on the African continent. Known as the Angel of God, he has made outrageous claims, including that he can fly to heaven and meet with Jesus. But what truly cemented his place in infamy was not his wild declarations, but his explosive temper often unleashed in shocking public displays. In 2016, Obinim shocked the world when a live televised service showed him summoning two teenagers whom he claimed to have adopted before the congregation. Accusing them of premarital sex and abortion, he produced a black leather belt and began whipping them in front of the entire church. The congregation cheered as he struck the teens, repeatedly calling them stupid and mocking their low economic status. The disturbing footage went viral, sparking outrage from human rights groups and demands for accountability. Obinim was arrested, charged with physical assault, and eventually fined. He and his associates were also placed under a one-year bond of good behavior with jail time threatened if they reoffended. But this was not an isolated case. Over the years, Obinim's temper has manifested in vandalism brawls and bizarre deliverance practices. He has been accused of stomping on the stomach of a supposedly pregnant woman during a service, publicly insulting critics, and even engaging in adultery with the wife of a junior pastor. Each scandal added to his reputation as a leader who blurred the line between faith and abuse. While many pastors are remembered for fiery sermons, Obinim is remembered for physical violence and shocking theatrics. His story is a chilling reminder of how temper, when unchecked, can move beyond words into actions that cause real harm. Even today, his name evokes not inspiration but outrage, a cautionary tale of a pastor who let anger and ego overshadow his calling. Kevin Wesley. Reverend Kevin Wesley once stood behind the pulpit as a respected pastor preaching the gospel with conviction. But his story took a dramatic turn when he renounced Christianity, entirely declaring that he no longer believed in the faith he once defended. His bold departure shocked his congregation and made headlines online. Unlike others who quietly stepped away, Wesley chose confrontation, broadcasting fiery rants on social media that revealed both his passion and his temper. In viral videos, Wesley breaks down the reasons for his rejection of religion, often with a sharp edge that leaves little room for disagreement. His words come fast, his voice rises, and frustration pours out as he challenges anyone who dares to argue. Supporters praise his honesty and bravery, while critics describe his tone as angry, bitter, and combative. The pulpit that once hosted sermons of guidance has been replaced by online platforms filled with fiery debates. One of the most talked about aspects of Wesley's new life is his unconventional family structure. He openly shares life with 2 wives, celebrating their union on social media. To some, it is a bold act of authenticity. To others, it is another scandal in a long list of provocations. His posts often attract critics, and Wesley rarely lets comments slide. He claps back with lengthy, heated responses that further reveal his quick temper. What makes Wesley's story unique is that his temper did not end with his ministry, it intensified after leaving it. While many pastors on this list lost their cool inside the church, Wesley continues to showcase his frustration online, making confrontation a central part of his identity. For some, he is a liberator who speaks truth without fear. For others, he is proof that rage can consume even those who walk away from the pulpit. Either way, Reverend Kevin Wesley has redefined what it means to lose your temper, turning it into a lifestyle and a brand that keeps his name in constant debate. Anger in the pulpit has always divided opinions. Some call it righteous fire, others see it as weakness exposed. From Carlton Thunderberg's luxury watch rant to Daniel Obenham's violent outbursts, these pastors proved that tempers can overshadow teachings. But is raw passion a sign of authenticity or a dangerous flaw in leadership? On Legends of Black Excellence, we've shown how charisma and conflict often collide. Now the question is yours: when a spiritual leader loses control, does it make them more human or less worthy to lead?